Chapter 4 Fourth Night. Fourth Night. She awoke once more to this benighted existence, all alone in the world. After some roaming, she found a good spot to lay her head, a mostly unused electrical substation just outside the district center, the door to one of the power cabins unlocked. Despite the noise from the transformers, she'd chosen the place as her sleeping site, tying the door's handle to a sturdy wall pipe with electrical cable, and then lying down behind the electrical equipment with a fire blanket draped over her to minimize risk of accidental discovery during the day. It had been enough. She'd slept the day away safely, the sun having come and gone while she lay oblivious to the world. It was dark again, and always would be, for her. She made a mental note of the substation's general location, even though she knew she'd never be able to find it again anyway. Sitting on one of the fallen pylons, she pondered her next move. She felt strange, as if her body was less connected to her. It felt a bit numb, in a way, as if it wasn't really hers. Not as much as it had been before, anyway. It was a highly discomforting feeling. Perhaps it was the virus. Perhaps it was simply the emotional impacts taking their toll. And what the hell had happened with the orca back there? She'd somehow spat some kind of acidic gunk in her face. That was disgusting. She hoped the fat bitch wasn't too badly hurt, but then asked herself what she was thinking. This was beyond some bloated dwarf playing petty tyrant in the workplace. The orca would have killed her. The acid spit wouldn't be without its uses, but god damn it if it wasn't the most revolting thing ever. It wasn't like gastric acid, it was much, much worse. She was changing, she knew it. There was no mirror around, but she already knew her eye was probably completely red now. She could feel it somehow. Maybe the other one too. And the canines in her mouth, while previously only sharper than before, had now elongated into actual fangs. The transformation was almost complete, and realizing this struck her with such a massive feeling of hopelessness that she felt she might as well lie down and die. But, as soon as she was aware of the feeling, she also reminded herself that it could have been much worse. In the myths and legends, vampires were always tormented, pitiable creatures, enslaved to their lust for blood, and only able to feel the most painful of emotions. And honestly, she felt pretty much the same as when she was alive. Sure, she felt the loss and loneliness of being a fugitive without a job or friends, but she felt that she was still capable of telling a joke and laughing at one, or enjoying a cool breeze during a warm night, or any of the little and less little joys in life. There was no eternal melancholy, no emotional deadness. But she realized she didn't have time to ruminate on the specifics and sensations that came with her new existence. She could just sit here forever, probably, with Tweezer's robot shirt softly moving in the wind. But as long as she did so, nothing changed, and her former employer could start and continue its manhunt at its leisure. She'd either have to dismantle the entire company by herself, which was of course totally doable, or simply go somewhere Sane couldn't reach her. For now, she had to get a hold of something more useful than just the shirt around her shoulders and the armored trousers around her ass. Because apart from the puny pistol, this really was the entire extent of her possessions now. Well, that and the cred stick in her pocket. Maybe some pocket lint too, if she was lucky. She could spend the cred stick to get a hold of some gear, but that seemed like a bad idea. She'd need everything she could get, and squandering her only million now would be causing even more trouble down the line. Not to mention that the cred stick, tied to her sin, was probably hot as hell right now. No, she had to get to her old apartment. She knew the T-1000 would definitely try to require her there, but it was the only thing she could do for now. She didn't have much friends outside the company, which meant almost no friends that could be trusted. And the fates of the unfortunate runners, combined with what she'd had to do to Philip, was bad enough for her to know she couldn't place any more people in danger. She was on her own, and her old apartment would have her personal items, including some light ballistic armor and her home security abuse shotgun. A change of underwear might be nice too. Also abroad. Modest seas or no, some support was always more comfortable. There was a chance the place was ransacked, and an almost certain chance the place was guarded, but she had to risk it. It was strange, but she somehow knew the virus had given her abilities that would help her get inside. Walking there would be dangerous, but taking any form of public transportation would get her discovered immediately. Her sin popping up on the boards of Tsang security all over Hong Kong. It wouldn't take them long to predict her destination. Hey, but wait. There was an idea. Her sin would doubtless send red lights going off, and that would mean they'd know about her general location except. If they didn't look for the location, but rather the destination. It had to make sense, though. She couldn't fool them with a random place. It had to be logical and plausible. Where could she go if she was a fugitive? If not her own apartment. It had to be a place Tsang couldn't just trash, a place where no one would get killed. Right? The airport. Every fugitive tried to get on a plane, right? It would be the logical conclusion to draw from Tsang's standpoint. She was near Kowloon Highway, so if she took the metro in Nam Chong Station, not too far from here, it would certainly look like she was trying to get to the airport. Hell, the MTR had recently completed works to allow the airport express train to stop there, instead of just blasting past, so it should be clear where she was supposedly going. And Tsang and local PD would have a nightmare time searching the place. Even at this hour. It was certain to keep them occupied for a good long time. And if the guard stationed at her apartment heard she was at the airport, or was supposed to be there anyway, they'd probably be diverted to there, or at least be much less vigilant. She looked more than a bit out of place among the commuters who walked in her opposite direction, away from Nam Chong Station, and to their homes. The blood on her shirt made quite a few eyes turn towards her, and even more away from her, but there were no incidents, so it was doubtful that Tsang had spread an all-points bulletin regarding her, because, well, for whatever reason they wanted her dead. It was definitely something they didn't want to advertise in papers and on television. So there'd be no instant wailing alarm when the ticket computer registered her sin either. It'd be a silent one. She hoped Tsang would be too eager to catch her to stop and think that she'd know exactly when she'd appear on their monitors. It was a great plan. All it took was for no one to stop, scratch his chin, go, maybe she wants us to think she's headed there. Once she'd procured her ticket, she'd hoof it to her old apartment complex, get up there somehow, and grab some stuff for the road. It was a great plan. Well, it was the best plan she had. The entrance to Nam Chong Station was ahead, a stairway to the underground, a bright white sign with, obviously, Nam Chong Station, and a red downward arrow marking the direction for Calabasas. People were vomited out, their ordeal over for today, a lesser amount were being swallowed, only beginning their sentence below ground. Kate's boots ticked on the moist stone as she went down the stairs. She hadn't gotten off in Nam Chong before. It wasn't her line, but the stations were usually designed pretty much the same, so she'd find the ticket office without much trouble. She navigated between the yellow pillars to find the office.
"Hello,"
she said to the girl in the booth, keeping her eyes downcast.
"This is kind of embarrassing, but I forgot my IDs. I'm with Tsang Corporation, and I'd like to use my work Metro subscription."
The girl sighed and rolled her eyes. They always did that. It meant they'd have to type in an entire sin to check if that person actually had a subscription. Kate had one. Everyone at Tsang did. Now if her employer was dumb, they'd have deactivated her sub by now. If her employer was smart, they'd let her use the Metro and snatch her when she came out. She hoped for the second.
"Miss?"
The voice pulled her from her thoughts. With a frown, the girl repeated,
Your sin, please." "Oh, right, sorry. Pella 28, 5226 9, 6632. Not so fast."
The girl snapped, glaring at her keyboard.
Papa Lima 28T. -522. 6 Tango 9.
The metro attendant hit every key Kate named infuriatingly slowly, and for a minute Kate got nervous. thinking she knew something was up. Still, couldn't look suspicious.
/66ET-32 Mean.
The girl was typing now, and she'd begun emitting a low buzzing sound.
Me.
It'd be funny if Kate wasn't so tense. Eventually, she droned.
That's an order.
A printer began whining and spat out her ticket.
Keep this on you at all times and present it when asked.
She slid the ticket through the slot at the bottom of her booth window.
Cool, thanks. Yeah.
If she hated her job so much, why didn't she just choose something else? Kate proceeded to the platform, trying not to look too out of place, which was difficult to do while also keeping one's eyes downcast. To make the blood on her shirt look less suspicious, she passed by the toilets and grabbed some bog paper, pushing it against her nose. If someone asked, she could always say she got explosive nosebleeds out of nowhere from time to time. She had to scan the barcode on her ticket before she could board the train, even if she did not intend to. It had to look real after all. Standing on the sparsely populated platform, she waited for the train to arrive. There were trains every few minutes, so that wouldn't be a problem. The Asia World Expo train was hers. It stopped at the airport before ending at the old exposition site. How her life had turned upside down in just a few days. At the beginning of the week, she'd been just another wage slave, badging in and out, putting in the hours and getting paid at the end of the month. A pretty cushy, pretty secure job if you didn't count the slightly higher chance of suffering a bullet to the face every now and then. And to be honest, until the whole crisis had begun, her job mostly consisted of kicking out drunks and unruly customers, and collaring would-be Shadowrunners and petty miscreants, and those were the exciting times. Patrolling the hallways was the bulk of her job, and it was just as exciting as it sounded. And yet she'd been happy doing it. She had no aspirations of heroism or celebrity, no desire to build an illustrious career, like, for example, Philip. She'd been content where she was, just doing an honest and thorough security job, coming home at the end of the shift and watching a few trids, punching bags or faffing about on her computer. People always said a life like hers was unexciting, but she'd been happy with her job, her trids, and her computer games. At work, she got to feel tough in her armored uniform and her gun. Because yes, come on, it was a cool part of the job. And at home, she had her own worlds to immerse herself in. Here she was now, some chick with a bloody shirt standing on a metro platform, pretending to have a nosebleed. And yet, part of her knew she'd get through this. She'd conquer this, whatever it was, and emerge stronger. She'd discover what had happened to her, and why, and later, this would all be just bad memories. Sitting down and moping had never been her style, and it wouldn't be now either. She hated it when people said, "Fuck that noise," but seriously. Fuck that noise. The announcement for the Asia World Expo-bound train came, first in Cantonese, then Mandarin, then in English. One more minute. Then it was simply a matter of holding up her ticket at the scanner next to the train door, and off she was with. She only hoped there weren't spooks close enough to be dispatched straight to the metro station in the minutes it took for her to give her sin and wait for the train. Lights appeared at the end of the tunnel, non-metaphorical ones, and the train came to a halt on the platform. The travelers on her platform proceeded towards the train and boarded, but Kate simply scanned her pass and turned back.
Miss, the train won't wait.
Behind her stood the train conductor, wearing a stern frown.
No, I know,
Kate said.
I just changed my mind.
His frown deepened as if she'd offended the man personally by not taking his train.
Suit yourself.
And without another word, he pulled the lever to close the doors. Off went the train, and Kate walked briskly back, off the platform, vaulting over the turnstiles, and leaving the station back to Namshong Street. From there it was a several-kilometer jog to her apartment, but as she ran, she didn't tire as quickly as before, as if she had some strange vigor she didn't used to have. Of course it was clear what caused this. The virus taketh away, but it also bestowed new powers on its hosts, it would seem. Yao Sim-mong was a good run away, but she reached the district around the time she should have arrived at the airport. Good. The cleaners would be busy for a good while. She lived on the 5th floor of a small, by Hong Kong standards, building leased by Tsang, in a modest apartment near Prince Edward Station, a few streets off Nathan Road. She didn't get around in Hong Kong much. You didn't get far if you didn't speak Cantonese, or Mandarin at the least. Even though it was the course lingua franca, not many people in the street were impressed by English, and Kate's basic Polish was even more useless, so there really wasn't much reason to mingle with the population, at least not in the first months in Hong Kong. She walked a few streets, then took the metro to work. That was it. Instead of going down Nathan Road, which was a bit too conspicuous right now, even with the still busy traffic, she left the flashing, multicolored neon signs for what they were, and approached her old flat from the side streets, running parallel to the main road. She saw no one, which was a bit odd but not alarming, and found herself behind a bush in the rundown park opposite her building. Sure enough, there were two people in front of it dressed like civilians. But they didn't fool Kate for a second. They each had one hand inside their respective trench coats at all times, and their earwigs were clearly visible when they turned their heads to scan the streets. They'd parked themselves right at the building's entrance, on either side of the sliding double-glass doors, looking bored out of their minds. Were they hoping she'd just stroll up to them? Well, Kate figured she might as well be grateful that these two were sloppy enough to give themselves away so stupidly. They definitely weren't professional cleaners. Probably some kind of shady private subcontractor that called itself security, but really should use the name thugs for hire instead. But how was she going to get to her apartment? She scanned the building, but she knew this was the only entrance. The two hired guns remained in place, exchanging a few words every once in a while, but no more. There was too much open ground between her and the building, and they were doubtless carrying heavy pistols or submachine guns under their coats. Violence wasn't an option, which Kate didn't really mind. These two were clearly enforcers of dubious moral caliber, but that didn't mean it was okay to kill them. And it also didn't mean it was okay to risk getting shot to shreds by their SMGs. For a moment she thought about abandoning her plan and looking for an easier way to get supplies, but the apartment block looked so inviting, and she knew, somehow, that there was a way in. She simply had to trust in her new powers. She was stronger, more determined, hurrier, and faster now. There was a way, she knew it. She remained where she was for a little bit longer, observing the guards through the foliage. She'd never paid much attention to this badly maintained little playground/park, but right now she was glad it was there. Nope, they weren't budging. Waiting for a shift rotation was far too risky, since there was that pesky dawn thing and she couldn't risk the two thugs being relieved too late. Sneaking back into the alley, she made a circumventing movement around the apartment building and crept up on it via the back. There weren't any goons posted there, because honestly there was no way in from there anyway, and these guys didn't look beyond the lengths of their noses anyway. Looking up at the apartment, she saw the seams in the stonework, the horizontal openings where the walls switched between masonry and slabs of limestone. All good handholds, and despite feeling out of touch with her body, she also felt it was more capable. Not necessarily stronger, but definitely possessing a much higher endurance. From her vantage point in the alley behind her building, she saw the window of her apartment kitchen standing ajar, the way she left it. Good. It was worth the try. After closing her eyes and taking a breath, she began the climb. She proceeded shakily and slowly at first, probably looking rather ludicrous as she did so, but as she felt her body enduring the effort, she'd become more confident and efficient, and apart from a few close calls when a foot or hand briefly lost its purchase, she made it to the 5th floor just fine and, haha, losers standing guard at the entrance below. She pushed the window open and hauled herself through, stumbling hands first onto the tiled floor in a rather unelegant fashion. Her apartment was dark and quiet, and thankfully not ransacked. She wasn't going to risk turning a light on, besides, she had enhanced vision anyway, so there was no needed. There was nothing worth grabbing in her tiny kitchen apart from the small bit of cash she kept in her cookie jar, unless one counted food-caked dinner plates as a prize, so she pocketed the money and went straight to her bedroom, tiptoeing to minimize any risk of discovery. She felt a small pang of regret, realizing she'd never be able to spend the night here again. She'd lain in bed alone, but it had been nice to feel at home when she snuggled up under the blankets after a tiring shift. No more of that now. Still, she'd leave all this behind us and find herself another home and another bed. Somehow. Her closet contained the same old crap it always had, her uniforms and civilian clothes, mostly black and blue jeans and nondescript, no-brand t-shirts and pullovers. The sports bag under her bed was still there too, so she dragged it out from there and stuffed 2 pairs of jeans, 4 t-shirts and a few pairs of socks in there, as well as 2 bras and plenty of undies. That was that already. She'd change later, when she was somewhere safe. Again she felt sad when she saw the clothes she'd been leaving behind. They were just threads and fabric, but they were her clothes. Pushing the melancholy aside, she proceeded to the living room to grab the ballistic vest and shotgun she kept in the padlocked safe. As she passed by the hallway, she could hear radio chatter through the door. Shit, they had a man posted there too. Once she had her equipment, she could skedaddle, much as she wanted to stay here. Her poor little apartment, she'd loved living here, and she'd never see it again. As she went to the safe, she saw her computer terminal screen and stopped. She always left her computer on, Tang paid for the electricity anyway, but on the screen, right now, wasn't just her desktop, but also a blinking message box. She took a closer look. "Kate, read this. It's very important," the text box said, with a read and discard button under it. Maybe it was Philip trying to reach out. Licking her lips, she let her hand float over her mouse. Who was this? What was this? She hoped to hell it was a friend as she clicked the read button. The screen became black. She was aware of her heart, beating hard in her chest. Red letters appeared on the screen with a short bleep. "Thanks for letting us know where you are." Her breath stalled and she was unable to move, her eyes fixed on the screen as another bleep sounded, and below the original text, more red letters appeared. "Dumb ass. Bleep." A wave of heat washed over her. Shit. 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 Whoever monitored that message would immediately notify the thugs at the door and at the building entrance, and they'd come in to blast her. She had to get out. Right now. God damn it. God damn it. She should have known it'd be a trap. Fuck, why did she have to go and click that fucking message? Fuck, fuck, fuck. No time to grab her gun. She made to run for the window, but before she could make it to the hallway, the front door was kicked open, though there was no sound of splintering wood. Damn front door had been unlocked all this time. It really had been a trap. She dived behind her sofa and lay still, listening intently as the goon carefully proceeded to search the apartment. Meanwhile, the 2 others were doubtlessly running up the stairs or waiting for the lift, or if they were smart, splitting up to do both. She saw his flashlight zipping around the room, across the floor-to-ceiling window she often stood behind to look out over the city, then across the floor and away to where she couldn't see. When she closed her eyes, however, she could hear his breathing. Nervous and shallow. Shaky. Good. This wasn't someone who was trained for this. Still, he was probably holding a shotgun or SMG, and one blast or burst from either could end her fugitive state real quick. If she waited, there'd be 3 of them, and then she'd definitely get blown full of holes. She carefully peered up from behind the back of the sofa and saw a trench-coated, narrow-framed man with his back to her. It was pitch dark, and she could only see a silhouette, meaning he could see even less than that. It had to be now. Uncoiling like a spring, she launched herself over the sofa and almost without a sound, body-slammed into the man, bowling him over and sending them both to the ground, smashing into Kate's dinner table and breaking all the plates with a terrible noise. There was a loud blam, and the glass wall was blasted apart into shards, glass raining down on the floor and outside to the pavement below. He didn't get a chance to fire a second time, Kate snatching the barrel of the shotgun and whacking it down so hard the goon's face got smacked with a grip even as he was holding it. She heard the thug's nose break with a wet crunch. The man let go of the shotgun and Kate hit him again in the side of the head. The shotgun fell where Kate tossed it, slightly elevated, its flashlight falling on Kate's face. In the brief moment her eyes and those of her opponent locked. An urge surfaced inside her. one she knew she'd feel sooner or later, one she'd have to give in to if she wanted to live. And if she had to do this, a hired killer would be the least worst victim. Her would-be killer screamed in terror when he saw Kate's upper lip pull back to reveal the fang.
Ha ha! Ha!
He shrieked, kicking and flailing, but nothing he did would stop anything. Kate grabbed him by the short hair at his temple and let her head dive down, her fangs crunching into the man's throat, sweet, warm blood spraying into her mouth. As time stood still, the most peculiar thing happened. The numbness, the feeling of not being fully connected, vanished almost immediately, and she became aware of every muscle, every tendon, every bone, every vein in her body. Almost as if she became reunited with it. The blood didn't invigorate or strengthen her as such, but it made her feel anchored again, connected, right. She jerked her fangs free, throwing her head back, feeling the blood stream down her chin. When she opened her eyes, she saw the goon looking around, dazed, still pinned under her. Good. He was alive. She had to think fast. The other two could be here any second. Perhaps if she could disguise herself somehow, the trench coat might make her pass for one of them at a cursory glance, from behind.
Take it off,
she hissed at him, but the thug only replied with incoherent moaning, his eyes rolling in their socket cell. She hoped she hadn't infected him, but what else could she have done? Not feeding would have resulted in disaster eventually, that she knew for certain. She had no time to lose, leaping to her feet and rolling the guy over, pulling the long coat off him. If she made it to the stairs, she could pretend to be. Whatever. She'd think of something. Shrugging the coat on, she reached for the shotgun, but before she could grab it, she heard the elevator come to a stop in the hallway. Damn it! She took hold of the gun's grip, but her enemy held it by the receiver, clinging on for dear life.
Let go. Let go, or I'll. Hallway clear.
Fuck. This guy was too dazed to be a threat, and the shotgun had emptied both its barrels anyway, so it was no more than a club or an intimidation tool now. Let him hang on to it. What did it matter?
Vasily. Vasily, you dreckhead, sound off.
Two voices, one male, one female. Probably the two cronies at the front door. They'd come in now, and she couldn't make it to the door or the window. The only thing she could do was hope they'd be hasty and nervous. She threw herself to the ground, making sure her head was concealed behind the sofa, and played dead. In the dark, they just might mistake her for the other guy. And maybe then she'd get a window of opportunity to bolt for the door. Her heart pounded in her chest. If they saw her move, or if she bolted at the wrong time, or even if they decided to check him for vitals, she was a dead woman. Please don't let me die here, she thought furiously. Don't let me get shot by this scum. I don't deserve this.
Drek, she got the fracking Russian. Mean she's still around?
The female snapped.
Stay on your guard.
Silence as they swept the area with their weapons. She heard the footsteps slowly move past her, towards the kitchen and small dining room, where the other guy lay. If they recognized him, they'd put two and two together, even dumb lowlifes like this, and realize who it was on the ground back there. She opened her eyes, hoping for a good time to make a run for it. Between the sofa and the wall, she could see the flashlights moving farther away. They'd discover the Russian any moment now. As soon as they made him, she'd have to run, from the very moment they made a noise.
There. That's her. She's armed.
What? No.
Shoot her.
No, please. No. How did they see me? No, no, no. The deafening thunder of guns made the tiny apartment explode, and Kate screwed her eyes shut, unable to do anything but let the bullets and pellets tear through her. There was no pain, no ripping sensation. Only silence and ringing in her ears.
Docker? Drek, I think we got her.
What? She didn't feel a thing. She was still breathing, still alive. The female voice breathed.
Yeah. I think we did. Did you? I mean, Did you see that? She went right out the window.
The man said, his voice trembling.
Like in the trids.
Kate remained where she was. Oh God, they'd shot the wrong person. They'd seen a silhouette in the darkness, holding a weapon, and had opened fire blindly. She was sorry for the Russian, whoever he'd been, but her relief over being alive won out.
You alright?
The woman asked.
Ed. Not really. You? No. We have to check. Confirm the kill.
The woman's voice almost broke.
I'm not going down there to see. Nikki, we were paid to do this. We have to go and on.
She heard the woman sniff, like she was biting back tears.
I thought it'd be easier. We killed someone. Song?
A short silence.
Oh God, I'm gonna be sick. We knew stuff like this would be involved, Nikki. We gotta suck it up and do our jobs. We'll get used to it. I heard it gets easier. But I can't. I'll do it, just come with me. You don't have to look. What? What about the Russian?
Please let them leave me lying here. Please, let them go check first. Please, please, please.
Fraggin'? It was bound to happen sooner or later. You're right, the guy was fragging crazy. Come on.
Kate squeezed her eyes shut, hearing the boots move past her and into the hallway. Oh God, she was going to survive this. But she had to get out before they realized their error and doubled back to finish her off. From the hallway she heard the man say,
Dispatch, this is Ochre 1. Target is down. We are proceeding to confirm.
Picking herself up off the ground, she threw off the trench coat and quickly raced to the living room, punching in the key code for her weapons cabinet. Borp! The red lead lay up. Shit. She must have been too nervous, punched in the wrong code. Again she tapped it in. Barp. She tried one more time. Barp. Bastards! 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 Motherfuckers! She had no time to try and get the cabinet open, so hissing some more swear words, she scooped up her sports bag and ran for the stairs, barreling down the 5 floors as fast as she could. Now all she had to do was get out unseen. She threw the door to the ground floor hallway open and made for the exit. She just had to get past these two.
God damn it!
She heard the man shout when she pressed her hands against the double door.
God damn it, it's the Russian!
She pulled her hands back from the door. Crap, that voice sounded close. If she ran now, they'd just gun her down. There was too much open space, and this hallway only had one exit.
What? What? We shot the fragging Russian.
Kate listened at the door. Good thing these two were so loud they could probably hear them all the way to China.
What? How is that even? The body in the apartment. It wasn't the Russian, it was the target. We shot the Russian. I don't. Nikki, we shot the Russian. That means maybe it was just a decoy. Maybe she was just playing dead. Oh Drek, she better not still be alive. We have to assume.
A beep sounded.
Dispatch, this is Ochre 1. Target is still up. Repeat, target is still up. I'll get the stairs, you get the elevator. Let's move. Go.
Kate backed away from the door and looked for an escape route, not finding any in. Son of a bitch, she hadn't survived this long to get caught now. There was nowhere to go in the hallway, so she just ran back to the stairs, throwing open the door. She thought of taking the stairs a few floors higher, and waiting for them to call off the search, but even as nervous and as chaotic as they were now, the two thugs might be clever enough to search the entire building, including the upper floors. She heard police sirens wail in the distance, coming closer. Fuck, this too. Of course some of the other residents had called the police. How could they not have? Some Russian had just been shotgunned out the damn window. She had to get out, fast. No time for pussyfooting around. She hugged the wall next to the door to the stairs, and when it flew open, she pounced the woman who came through, grabbing the barrel and grip of her submachine gun and jerking it against her throat, strangling her. The woman let go of the weapon and clawed at Kate's face, making choking noises that sounded unmistakably like pleading. It would have been the safest, most practical choice to just strangle the bitch until her larynx collapsed and she suffocated. But Kate wasn't a killer, and she wasn't about to become one. Abruptly, she let go of the SMG's grip and whirled it around by the barrel, the grip cracking against the side of the woman's skull, sending her to the ground. The girl collapsed, her upper body landing hard on the base of the staircase. She rolled and held her hands in front of her.
Please. Don't kill me.
She begged, her voice hoarse from the choking she'd just received.
I won't,
Kate said, aiming the SMG at her dumb-looking orc face.
Not if you tell me all you know right now. Who hired you? It was. I don't know. We just do what they tell us to do. Who's they?
She snapped. She didn't have much time, but she needed answers.
I don't know.
The girl screamed, screwing her eyes shut.
I don't handle the contracts, I just do as I'm told, but I did get a look at the contract by accident. It had a logo. What logo? Tell me. A yellow pagoda type thing.
Fuck. All the other things had already made it pretty clear, but now it was definitely certain. It had been saying, her old employer, trying to kill her, probably after killing everyone else who'd survived the walled city. What the hell had happened there?
Fuck!
She snarled, furious at everything. The girl's face changed, from fear to outright horror, and she crawled backwards up the stairs, probably not even realizing.
What are you?
She'd seen the fangs, and only now actually noticed the eye. Her reaction meant she hadn't even been aware of exactly who they'd been hired to ambush and kill.
Not what?
She snapped.
Who? And who I am is an innocent person. Someone they want dead for no reason at all. Someone you would have shot if I hadn't stopped you. I'm sorry I didn't. We're not supposed to ask questions. No, it's easiest that way, isn't it?
She sneered at the orc girl with the greasy braid, but she realized she couldn't really blame the bitch. Not if her attitude and Sangsek had always been more or less the same. If they'd asked her to kill someone, told her not to ask questions, she had to admit to herself that she didn't know if she'd be able to choose the high road. It was easy and comforting not having to know.
Please, Jess. Don't kill me.
She held up her hands to shield her face, as if that would help. It would be easiest, and it would be safest. But no, she was better than these guys. Better than Tang.
I should, but I won't. On one condition.
There was a way to turn this into a good thing. A small one, but a good thing nevertheless. This girl, lying on the sickly yellow tiles of the stairs, was coming off easy, and she'd better do something in return.
Oh. Okay. What? You promise me you'll quit this job. Both of you. You find honest, decent work. DB. But No. No buts. The Corps are powerful, but they only get to pull this evil shit because we little people help them. And I want you to stop. It's not much, just 2 people, but it's 2 less. You know it's the right thing to do, Nikki.
The girl closed her eyes and lowered her head.
All right. I swear. I'll find another way, and I'll convince Song. Good. That's all I. Nikki, where are you?
A voice coming from the top of the stairs, skipping with contained panic.
Nikki!
Boots came hammering down the staircase.
Bitch, if you hurt her, then so help me God. Remember what I said and what you promised.
Kate said quickly. She tapped the MAC-22 submachine gun.
I'll be taking this.
Her eye fell on the top button of the orc's khaki shirt.
Oh, and these two,
she said with a smirk, sliding the sunglasses out from their hanging spot.
Don't pursue me. We won't. Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Song came barreling down the stairs, and the sirens wailed closer and closer. She didn't have much time left.
I'm leaving you your life,
Kate said to make sure the point was hammered home, even despite the urgent need to run.
Use it for good things. Both of you.
She didn't even await the response, bolting for the door and running out the hallway into the street, beating the sirens by mere seconds. The two goons would have to find their own way out. After putting some distance and some alleyways between her and her former home, she unzipped her sports bag, stuffed the SMG in it, and slowed to a walk. On the street corner ahead, there was a small soy calf shop where she could take a break and change clothes. She put on the sunglasses to hide her eyes. Wearing them at night made her look like a complete Dashanazalekano, but public perception would have to take a back seat to not getting assailed by Eastern European old men, with wide-brimmed hats and crucifixes sewn onto their overcoat. The man behind the counter rapped something in Cantonese, not even looking up from the soy calf powder bag he was trying to open with a dull knife, and followed with,
Get ya? One soy calf, please.
Kate asked quietly. The shop was all but empty, just one native middle-aged office wig slave typing on his handheld, and one old man nursing a soy calf which had clearly gone cold hours ago. It was anything but a cozy place, the walls tiled with white, the bright fluorescent lights making the place look even colder and more unwelcoming. The lit menu billboard above the counter had had its front removed long ago, leaving only more tubes of fluorescent light. Even his apron was stark white.
Tall? No, just regular.
Now the man did look up, his yellowing eyes half hidden under drooping eyelids.
Sun bothering you?
She had half a mind to say it wasn't, but the stark fluorescent mood-killing lights of his shitty shop were, but she just settled for.
I've got light kinda makes my eyes hurt.
He only harumphed with a disdainful face and set about making the soy cough. The machine chugged and squealed, and the beverage looked sludgy and clotted. The smell made her stomach turn, but she knew that, at least, wasn't the soy cough's fault.
Thanks. 5 nuyen.
Oh, right, she had to pay for this slop. No matter, she wasn't going to drink it anyway. Her cred stick was hot enough to burn through the floor all the way to Seattle, so she just gave him a 20 nuyen bill. Maybe she could get her cred stick.
Cash? You pay cash?
Yeah, dude. She didn't like it any more than he did.
Sorry, but yeah, I have to.
He sighed.
You pay cash. Yes, I do.
Kate insisted.
Money is money.
The soy calf wizard swore in Cantonese, probably a horrible insult at her address, but it didn't matter. She had bigger problems than a sludge brewer who treated customers like a nuisance. And despite his rather limited enthusiasm at having to accept cash, he still snatched the note from her and slapped a tenner and fiver on the counter.
Thanks,
she muttered.
I can see why this is such a successful establishment.
But of course it was pretty clear what this was. This place wasn't here to make money. It was probably a front for some kind of illegal activity. Triad, most likely. Whatever, it wasn't her concern. Her only concern right now was how conducive to disrobing the bathrooms in this place were. The place did have a TV, probably more for the soy calf sorcerer than for the customers, but still, seeing as it was there, she took a moment to just watch and treat herself to some peace and quiet. The news was on, in Cantonese of course, reporting about what looked like the seizure of a massive stash of BTL chips and nuyen by the HKPD. Then about some old guy being commended for God knew what, shaking hands with people in expensive suits while photo flashes lit him up like a stroboscope. It didn't interest her much at all, but it was nice to just sit down and watch some moving images without feeling hunted and in danger. She was pretty confident the news wouldn't feature an all-points bulletin showing her face. Tang had endeavored too much to keep it all under wraps. Another report, this one about a fire somewhere near the oil refineries up north. She sat bolt upright when she saw the yellow Tsang pagoda appear behind the newsreader. The guy tapping on his handheld also turned his attention towards the screen.
"Excuse me?"
Kate asked carefully.
"Do you speak English? Could you learn? What are they saying?"
He held up his hand, but not in an unfriendly fashion, listening intently. Kate waited in tension as the report progressed, then ended. The man nodded and turned back to her, telling her with a noticeable accent.
"It's just more of the same. Investigations into the occurrences of the walled city are turning up a whole lot of nothing, but the mayor has vowed to and promised to, and all those things. The investigation seems to be implicating Tang Corporation, has been for a while now, with talk of mysterious deaths and disappearances, making it look like they have a lot to hide. So Tsang's stock, well..."
He gave a long whistle, the tone lowering as his finger went down like a crashing aircraft.
Do they know what happened at the walled city?"
He shook his head.
"Doesn't seem like they do. Not yet, at least. But it's shaking the financial market. My employer, Wuxing Corporation, well..."
He flashed a winning stock market grin.
"Things are looking favorable for us. I'll bet."
Damn it, not much learned. She'd hoped to get at least some background or new information from the report.
"Thanks. Sure."
She grabbed her sports bag and proceeded to the bathroom. The place was as dismal as the rest of the establishment, but she had no need for the facilities. All she needed was a private place to change. She locked herself in a stall, making sure the latch was firmly on, then threw off her robot t-shirt, the blood now mostly faded. Even the air in this place felt dirty on her skin. She rummaged in her bag, fished out a bra and clean t-shirt, and put them on. Ah, clean clothes. She did the same with her armored trousers, replacing them with clean, fresh blue jeans. A zipped black hoodie made her outfit complete. It felt so good to wear clean clothes. Only a shower could make it even better. Now to get rid of the dirty ones. She'd have to lug the armored trousers along for a while longer, because she might still need them in the future, but the bloody green t-shirt could go. No sense holding on to that. She held it up, the rim of the collar in her fists, her fingers tense to rip it in half. But her eye fell on the silly cartoon robot and the faded red stains, and tears welled up in her eyes. She hadn't known Tweezer or any of the runners well at all, but she couldn't bring herself to rip up or even ditch the t-shirt. It was hers, and Kate knew Tweezer had loved it. One of the last things that remained of the unfortunate, lovely Orc girl, and of the runners as a whole. Instead of stuffing it into the trash as torn rags, she just rolled the shirt into a ball and crammed it in her sports bag, wiped her eyes, then added the armor. So the bag was now bulging with stuff, the zipper only barely able to hold. Her sunglasses back on, she returned to the white-tiled depression factory. It was time to get going, but there was one thing she still had to do tonight.
"Excuse me?"
she asked the handheld guy.
"Oh, well, excuse me. Again. One moment."
He tapped more keys, frowning in concentration, then finished with a flowery tap on the enter key.
"Yes, miss, how can I help?"
She uncrumpled the magazine paper May had given her the day before.
"This address. Can you tell me where it is?"
She knew it was somewhere in this district. The paper said so, but she'd never been here before, and had no idea where to go exactly. The man peered at the crumpled paper, straightening it on the table. Suddenly his eyes lit up.
"Ah, yes, I see it now. The handwriting is a bit shaky."
Yeah, that it was.
"But do you really want to go there?"
His face was concerned.
"Wish I didn't have to, but yeah, I do." Well, you head down this street, then make a right on Lotus Seed Lane. At the abandoned clothing warehouse you take a left, then another right, but... Alright, and then...
He shifted on his stool.
I must warn you. It's not a very safe neighborhood.
The man said carefully.
Especially not, well, for a cute white girl.
She flashed her most charming smile. Getting a compliment was always nice.
At night. Oh.
Whoops.
I'll be fine. I can take care of myself.
He wasn't convinced, but went on regardless.
Well, when you take that right, you'll be in a narrow one-way street. Tiny houses with a pub on the right side. Called, the Red Ox or something. Closed now, though. That's the street you're looking for. Cool, thanks,
she said with a smile.
I really appreciate it. I really feel that I must warn you again. It's not safe.
The guy probably meant well, but he wasn't her dad, even though he was old enough to be. She wanted to answer, but before she could, she was interrupted by the old bum on the other side of the cafe.
No point warning her.
He piped up.
People going to Cromwell Street go there because they have to, and at night because they have to.
A hot flush went through her. What the... Did this guy know? How? Because of the address? Or because he could sense?
Go on,
he rasped. His beard was so thick she couldn't even see his mouth move, only the beard hairs being displaced from the air as he spoke.
Go to Cromwell Street. They'll help you, and you better listen to what they have to say. Oh. 'Kay?
She wasn't comfortable with this, not at all.
Now get out of here, this is no place for you.
Silence fell, the entire cafe spending a short moment in suspended animation, until Kate said,
You're right. This is no place for me.
She threw her sports bag over her shoulder, and after giving the stock market man a muttered,
Thanks again,
she left the place. The old guy had given her nerves a rattle by identifying her and calling her out in public. Because he had seen what she was certain of it. What was this guy, some old retired vampire hunter? What he'd said hadn't been friendly at all. It had been clear that he'd meant get helped, or else's. Weird. She decided not to waste time and energy feeling uncomfortable, and started walking in the direction stock market guy had pointed her towards, one hand in her sports bag, on the grip of Nicky What's-Her-Face's SMG. If these streets weren't safe, then it was a good idea to keep a weapon ready. She walked past a small scrapyard, with vehicles piled up behind the chain-link fence that surrounded it, a metal drum full of burning trash on the sidewalk. The night was cold, the asphalt glistening with the night's moisture. Refuse littered the streets, some moving with the dismal breeze, some too heavy to be picked up by it. Graffiti tags were everywhere. Stock market guy had been right. This was a bad neighborhood. The dead body lying face down on the other side made that even more apparent, dogs licking at the blood that had soaked into the man's shirt from the holes made by several bullets. The mere fact that these places existed made her sad beyond words. 3 figures stood at the end of the road, where she was supposed to take a right to end up on Cromwell Street. They weren't casually chatting. One of them, a lanky silhouette, stood opposite the 2 others, his posture showing that he was all but ready to bolt. The other 2 looked far more confident, and the striking implements in their hands probably gave them cause too. Kate approached warily, keeping her finger near the SMG's trigger.
Give, stink man,
she heard one of the armed men say.
Cred stick. Now, you give. But I...
The victim stammered, holding his hands out in front of him.
What's going on here?
Kate asked casually, ready to draw the gun. She saw no firearms on them, so she had the advantage, hopefully. Whatever it was, she wasn't going to stand by and let someone get robbed or worse. One of the 2 men laughed. He was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, hanging open, his belly, chest, and arms completely tattooed with Chinese symbols, a dragon weaving through them. It was pretty clear who these 2 were. He said something in Mandarin, which Kate didn't understand, but the tone, His disdainful expression and the last word, which she did know, told her enough. There were no friendly ways to call someone a gilau.
Yeah, whatever,
she said back.
I don't care what you're doing. Just leave this guy alone. Whoever he is, Zoltek.
The victim, meanwhile, stood looking, completely useless, his knees shaking. Kate saw he was bald, with only a few wispy hairs remaining, and while it was hard to tell in the dark, he seemed to have some kind of big boils or pustules on the side of his face. The thug, who actually spoke English, intoned in a bothered voice, without even deeming her worthy of a glance.
You go away. Not problem for you.
He had a big wart on his cheek.
I'm making it my problem.
Kate simply said.
Leave this man alone.
If he even was a man. This time he did look in her direction.
You go fuck your thing, Changfu.
He spat. Kate didn't know what the word meant, but she doubted it was a compliment.
You go. Gaw. Burst your chrysanthemums.
The insult sounded so comical and nonsensical that Kate had to stifle a laugh. The tattooed guy had had enough, and he lifted his improvised weapon, a baseball bat with a circular saw blade bolted to it. He barked at her in Mandarin, shaking his weapon to show he meant business. The one who spoke a little English hefted his machete too, their previous victim all but forgotten.
No, no, no,
Kate moaned. It was her turn to be bored. She let the SMG slide out of her sports bag and said to them,
Don't bring a baseball bat with a buzzsaw tacked onto a firefight, boys.
The two remained where they were, their weapons still raised, their faces full of contained fury.
Go on,
she told them.
Go, pop your rhododendrons. We see you. We see you next time,
Wartface said in his broken English, pointing a furious finger at her.
We remove guts. Oh, you're going to commit seppuku?
Despite the fact that these guys would probably make good on their threat, Kate couldn't help but find the situation amusing.
No. You, we remove guts. It's not like that hasn't happened before. Now keep moving.
She had had just about enough of these two. They walked away, backwards, all the while trying to make impressive poses and gestures. Wartface threatened her with his machete from far away, while Open Shirt flashed his teeth at her and made monkey faces. She kept the MAC-22 trained on them, waiting patiently for them to walk away and round the corner. When they were gone, the pustule-faced man let out a long, ragged sigh. His skin was a pale, sickly gray, even in the darkness of the alley, and his features were emaciated, like he was starving, and had been for weeks. The odor coming off him was rotten and putrid.
Deep dicks. Thank you. They would have broken my legs or worse if you hadn't. Yeah, buddy.
She broke him off.
There won't always be an awesome chick appearing out of nowhere to save you. Next time guys like these try to rob you, you don't start babbling. You give them your cred stick.
Triad punks like these wouldn't hesitate to beat someone's skull in, or hack their ribcage open for a few nuoyan.
I would have. If they hadn't taken my cred stick last week already. These scum, they know we're vulnerable. They prey on.
He remembered himself.
No matter. Can't give them what they've already taken. Then you run.
She sighed and looked around.
I assume you're here for the same thing I am.
Competing for the trophy of worst liar in the world, the miserable man said.
I don't know what you mean, I'm just a... Yeah.
Kate said. She really didn't want to waste too much time in this shitty part of town.
I'm like you, don't worry.
She flashed her fangs in a humorless grin, but actually saying it out loud made her realize something terrifying.
I'm,
she asked carefully.
Not going to become like you, am I? No,
he said bitterly.
You've got a different strain. Fortunately for you. But thanks for the compliment.
Kate tried not to show her relief too much. She followed the gaunt creature as he walked into Cromwell Street. It was a narrow alley with trash everywhere. True enough, they passed a closed pub called the Red Ox.
Okay. So, I got this address from someone, but I don't know what I can expect. It's an informational group.
The pustule man grunted.
For people afflicted with the MHAV to learn about their condition, what they can do to minimize the effects, and so on.
He really did stink terribly, like rotten meat left in the sun all day.
Oh, good, because I have a lot of questions. You'll get to ask them.
That was all he said. The fact that she'd saved her life had taken a backseat to his renewed realization of how repulsive he was. It had been Kate's fault, really.
Hey, I'm sorry for being so inconsiderate. I didn't mean. Yes, you did.
He rasped.
I disgust you, and you hoped you wouldn't be as disgusting as I am. It's not your fault. All you amps are like this. Selfish. Glad they're not us. That's not.
He stopped walking.
I suppose it's comforting for you. Things could always be worse like that. Well, I'm glad to have put you at ease with by being the kind of worse you needed. Look, hey, I used to be a laboratory technician.
He half shouted at her.
I had a university degree, a high-paying job, a wife, an apartment near Crown Road. I wasn't always this abomination.
Geez, she'd really been an idiot.
I know,
she said, trying to calm him.
I never saw you as just like this. Yes, well, I'm sure the virus is a terrible trial for you too. The tragedy of being a normal-looking white girl with some dental abnormalities and a slightly sensitive skin.
He resumed walking.
We're nearly there.
This was beyond fixing, and she simply followed the foul-smelling corpse man as he walked to his cellar grill and lifted it up.
Down here.
She preceded him down the brick stairs, finding herself in a dank cellar. A stink hung in the place, her companion's putrid odor magnified tenfold. Several figures were sitting in a circle, on folded metal chairs, lit by a few candles in the center. Some were hunched, emaciated creatures, others passed for fairly normal. Humans only, though. She couldn't see a single troll, orc, or elf. A few heads turned, others didn't move, most just staring at the candles in the circle.
Take a seat.
The former lab tech croaked at her.
Not too close to me, I stink. Hey, come on.
He said nothing, just shuffled to one of the empty chairs and sat, plucking at the pustules on his face. She did the same, apart from the pustule plucking, and sat down between two people who still looked human. Immediately the lab tech threw her an accusatory glance, as if to tell her he knew she was going to choose that seat.
So,
one of the human-looking guys asked, leaning back in his chair. He had a beard and receding hairline. His English was accented but understandable.
When does this start, yeah? Few more minutes.
One of the more badly afflicted women said. It looked to be a girl in her late teens, with blue hair shaved to a stubble on one side. She wore heavy-rimmed glasses.
She'll be here in a second.
There were more uncomfortable moments of silence as everyone just watched the candles burn. Kate had no idea what to say either, so she just joined in the quiet. Nobody seemed to know each other, at least not very well, even though Lab Tech and Blue Hair had apparently been here before. She noticed that none of the other infected had ocular discoloration. Strange. She'd figured they'd have red eyes, or at least one like her, but they all seemed to have perfectly normal-looking peepers. Perhaps it was best to keep her sunglasses on for the time being. Minutes passed.
There she is.
All heads turned as the long-awaited she arrived, descending the brick stairs quietly before letting the grate fall back into place. Heels ticked subtly on the stone as she approached, and one of the more unfortunate sufferers of the virus immediately stood up to cede his place. But the woman shook her head, briefly placed a hand on his shoulder to guide him back onto his chair, then took a wooden crate from the corner, quickly sweeping the dust and filth off to sit down on it. She was clearly a native, though her hair seemed more dark brown than the typical jet black of the people here. It was cut in a fringe at the front, with 2 strands left long, red streaks dyed in them. They went all the way down to her hips. She wore a green dress with strange markings on the collar, cuffs, and hem. She was pretty enough, with pouty lips. Kate had been told men loved those, although she looked like she hadn't slept in days.
A few new members today,
she said in a soft voice, with cultured and flawless English.
Welcome. I'm sorry it's been so long since the last meeting. I've been very busy. That's all right, Laoshi.
The girl with the blue hair rasped.
We know you're doing this on top of your normal job. Thank you again for doing this for us. Please,
the woman said with a smile.
I'm just a friend, not your teacher.
Kate looked intently as she spoke, and saw no elongated eye teeth. Either she had a different strain, or she simply wasn't one of the infected like them.
So, before we introduce ourselves,
the woman announced,
it's important for new people to know that we don't use real names. There are those who would destroy you, and we cannot risk knowing each other's true identities. Same goes for who told you about this place. They must stay anonymous.
Made sense, Kate supposed. And this whole candlelit circle thing had enough of a secret cult meeting vibe already, so why not go all the way?
Since we have a few new faces, I'll start the information session with the basics, so you can all understand what's happened to you, and what you're up against. Feel free to ask questions whenever you like. But first, let's all introduce ourselves. Remember, choose an alias or a nickname.
Every member of the circle briefly got the floor, saying their names and what had happened to them. Lab Tech had chosen the nickname Erlenmeyer. He'd been called to test tissues during a police investigation and had been infected with the virus when part of his emanation subject had ruptured in his face. Blue-haired girl called herself Blogger and had been snatched after returning home from her coffee shop. She'd told her story with dignity, but Kate could see the relived pain on her ruined face as she spoke of the creature that had torn her left hand off with its teeth and passed the infection to her. She equated it to rape, and Kate figured that wasn't all that unreasonable. Impatient Beard Man just made up the alias Chang on the spot, and said he'd been approached in a bar by a not unattractive black girl, had imparted to be not unattracted to dark skin, and then made the correct assumption that no one needed to be told how it had gone afterward. It was Kate's turn to introduce herself.
Another new face,
the group leader said with a warm smile.
No need to hide your eyes, dear. We're all equal here. No secrets, no shame, no opacity. I'd like to keep them on for now, if that's all right with you. Of course.
The woman, apparently nicknamed Laoshi, immediately said.
If it makes you feel more comfortable. Now please, the group would love to know about you. Right.
She rose and looked around the circle of faces, some more disinterested than others.
I guess you can call me. I don't know. Kotek, I suppose.
It was what her mother had called her when she was little.
I don't know how I got infected. All I know is I woke up in a crashed ambulance with some bad injuries. I don't know how it happened. I can't remember anything about the accident.
The woman with the fringe frowned, holding a finger to her lip.
That's strange. Amnesia typically isn't an effect of MHVV infection, or any mutation I'm aware of. It's quite common,
one of the others chimed in cautiously,
for a survivor of a traumatic accident like a car crash to not remember anything about the actual event.
He apologized quickly, with an embarrassed smile.
Sorry, I'm Bowtie.
She didn't have to ask why he'd chosen that name.
Male nurse.
He cleared his throat and explained to the group leader.
I don't think it's a side effect of the infection, but rather of the accident itself. Ah.
Laoshi nodded.
Yes, I've heard of that happen. That's unfortunate, but of course life's ahead of us, not behind. And yes, I deliberately say life, because you all still have one, despite what you may think.
The round of introductions was completed, everyone sharing with the group what had happened to them. And how? Some stories were crushingly banal, others were tragic, and only a single one was actually humorous. Laoshi, or whatever her real name was, introduced herself last. She was uninfected and had formed this group as a sort of safe haven for MHAV patients to inform them, guide them, and to provide a healthy environment for them to gather and share their burden. And in fact, she wasn't wrong. The place did feel safe somehow. It was a tragic stinkhole lit by sputtering candles, but everyone here had something that bound them. It was almost cozy in a way.
The human meta-human vampiric virus,
Laoshi explained,
is just that, a virus. It's not a curse, not a punishment, not a deformity. None of you were infected because you were evil, unclean, unworthy, or inferior. It does not make you a zombie or an animal or a monster or even a bad person. The virus does not discriminate, it does not choose its victims. It's both sad and comforting at the same time, but you were all infected by pure coincidence. Because you were at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Kate didn't have a hard time believing that, but she was fully aware that it might not be so easy for the more deformed people in the group. One of the new people raised his hand. Impatient Beard Man. Kate preferred thinking of him as that, rather than the gruesomely uninspired Chang.
Why are there only humans here? Can't the virus infect other races? I mean, it is called the human meta-human virus, right?
Laoshi nodded.
Good question. No, the virus does not infect only humans. I wish it did. However, with some very, very rare exceptions, the only ones who remain sane after infection are we, humanity. All other meta-human races transform, not just physically.
She looked at the floor.
They are lost to us, become monsters.
Silence fell for a few moments, after which another person, a girl who looked no older than 15 and had introduced herself as Celine, raised her hand.
And I'm so sorry to have to say this, but why are some of us, well?
Laoshi nodded, thankfully sparing the girl and everyone else the end of the question.
There are several strains of the human meta-human vampiric virus. Most of you have the more common Hards-Greenbaum strain.
Kate had heard that name before. Freezer had called her infection by that name too.
It's the least destructive variant. Like the vampires?
Impatient Beard Man asked. Laoshi nodded again.
I'd prefer it if we didn't use the terms vampires and ghouls. But yes, their symptoms most closely resemble those of the vampires of folklore. The other type,
she sighed, giving Blogger a sad look,
is the Krieger strain, where the Hards-Greenbaum variant is already aggressive in its rewriting of its victim's genetic code. Krieger is such a deleterious virus that it causes even more dramatic changes. There are more strains like Brockner-Langer, Jarka Crescione, as well as some other minor variants, but I've never seen those here, with the exception of one Brockner-Langer patient a few years ago.
The teenage girl asked.
So, the people infected with hearts, they drink blood, and the ones with the other type, they find themselves forced to consume human flesh.
All the ghouls looked away, while the other new members shifted in their seat. Kate included. Drinking blood was bad enough, but being driven to cannibalism? Damn.
But mind, and this is important,
Laoshi went on,
it's not the drinking of blood or the eating of flesh that sustains the human meta-human vampiric virus patient.
Kate said, figuring that if this was a safe place to talk, it also was a safe place to confess their sins.
Drank someone's blood tonight. I kinda hate myself for it, but I knew I had to, and it really did make me feel alive again. So,
Laoshi smiled patiently.
That's what I'm getting to.
Blogger opened her mouth, but Laoshi gently silenced her.
No cheating, Blogger. Kotek, the consumption of human organic material is necessary, but it provides no sustenance in a biological sense. What you need to survive is something that isn't easily described.
She sighed, thinking, then asked Kate,
How did you feel when you nourished yourself? Be as specific, as poetic, as dramatic as you can. No need to be embarrassed about your choice of words. It's hard to describe. Yes, it is, but it's important. Go ahead, there is no wrong answer.
She tried to recall the feeling, but couldn't, not really. She felt normal now, and it was hard to remember how it had felt before she'd fed. She'd have to recall the memory of the memory.
I remember experiencing some kind of numbness.
Laoshi's smile widened.
Yes, good. Go on. And when I fed, it was gone again. It was as if my body didn't belong to me. Not entirely, anyway. Like it was slowly drifting away from me. Yes, that's a good way to describe it.
Several group members nodded, indicating they'd felt the same thing too.
Blogger?
The blue-haired girl was eager to show how well she'd paid attention during the sessions, sitting up straight, her blue hair flapping against the sores on the side of her head. Kate had to admire her dedication to shave her scalp with all those weeping growths there.
What matters isn't the amount of biological material consumed, but rather the emotional intensity of the transfer.
She droned it like she was reciting the answer to an oral exam question, not pausing or taking a breath between sentences.
If the victim is in a state of high emotional activity, more essence will be transferred. Usually this psychic intensity is induced through overwhelming fear or terror. But there are also other ways to cause this kind of high emotional flare, such as but not limited to extreme pain, rage, hatred, panic, confusion, or profound grief, but also less obvious but equally conducive emotions like lust, overwhelming joy, or debilitating hopelessness, and even perhaps...
Now she had to stop and take a breath, but she went right on yapping.
Activity is to provide a conductor for essence to be sheared from the victim and consumed by the infected individual, this essence. Yes, all right.
Laoshi stopped her, laughing at the girl's zeal.
You're going to explode your tongue, going so fast, and I think you've already lost half of the new people, judging from the confused faces. So what?
Impatient beard guy asked.
It doesn't matter how much blood we drink, but how jacked up our victim is. Yes,
she said, her face turning serious again.
The blood drinking is a ritual and necessary, but what you really feed on is essence. And that essence is released when the biological transfer is accompanied by an emotional discharge. The more intense the distance, the better the transfer. So basically that means...
Teenage girl asked.
There's no point to, make a vow to only feed on willing people?
She sounded intensely sad to ask it.
Like I can't just find a friend who gives it to me of his own free will. In all cases but the extremely rare.
Laoshi said gravely.
No. Seems the virus doesn't want this to be easy.
Bowtie said, his voice bitter.
So much for trying not to harm people.
Teenage agreed with a hopeless sigh.
All I can say,
Laoshi told them,
is that you still have some kind of choice. You'll have to feed on innocence, no getting around that. But you can choose who, and you can choose how. The easy way is to just pick anyone who's vulnerable and alone, and terrify them to the verge of a heart attack. In fact, this is what most of the less morally inhibited infected do. All I'm hoping you'll do is pick your victims and not scare them any more than necessary. So let me get this straight.
One of the ghouls asked.
This virus isn't content with just turning us into cannibals. We have to terrify people to survive? I mean, is this virus just trying to be as much of a dick as possible? The virus isn't a conscious entity, even though it might sometimes appear so. It's important to always keep this in mind,
Laoshi said.
But yes, this is the sad truth. Essence is only released in a state of extreme emotional tension. And turn it any way you want, but you need this essence to survive.
She corrected herself.
No, not survive. To...
She went silent for a while.
I suppose I should explain what essence is. First, do any of you have an idea?
With a smile, she added.
The new people, not the regulars.
Bowtie raised his hand.
I did my internship at a cyber clinic, and the surgeons there kept talking about essence, saying too many cyber implants would. I don't know, drain it or dissipate it. They talked about it like it was a soul.
Laoshi said, rocking her head.
Not entirely. A lot of people simply equate it with the soul, and for many intents and purposes, you can see it as such. But well, let me illustrate. In the case of cyberware, for instance, essence diminishes proportionately to the amount of synthetic body parts used. The more the body trades its natural form for a mechanical one, the less the soul feels connected to the body, because it no longer recognizes the cyberware as part of it. It sees it as different, as alien. This is the essence we speak at. It's not the soul itself, but rather what keeps your mind attached to your body.
So that's where that feeling of detachment came from, that feeling of her body not being hers. That strange numbness, not of the body, but of the soul. She'd been losing this essence thing, and her soul had been slowly disconnecting from her body. She shivered at the thought. It was a gruesome thing to think about. Laoshi had picked up on it.
I see this makes you uncomfortable. It should, sadly.
Her voice suddenly hoarse, Kate said.
So if your essence is gone completely, does that mean you die?
She saw a blogger looking away.
If only. Yes,
Laoshi echoed.
If only. What happens is similar to the effect of too much essence being eroded by cyberware. Bowtie, have those doctors at the clinic ever mentioned what happened to people who, as they love to say, chrome themselves up too much?
The man became very quiet.
I'm afraid to mention the word. Please do it anyway. The truth is hard, but it's important that we all know the dangers.
He cleared his throat and leaned forward, the candles casting an eerie orange glow on his round face.
They sometimes used the word cyber zombie.
Silence felt.
Yes, that's the word most often used, and it's painfully accurate. To answer your question, Kotek, there are many different reasons for essence loss, but the result is never death. When a person loses or surrenders all his or her essence, the soul is separated from the body forever. The body still lives in a way, but the soul has left it. Cyber zombies are a particularly gruesome example, the essence loss stemming from the soul no longer being able to recognize the body. Cyber zombies become indiscriminate killing machines, or living automata if worked by a rigger. Conscious, but mindless. It's a horrible fate, to say the least.
Teenage girl raised her hand.
With all due respect, are you here to educate us, or terrify us?
Kate, and presumably everyone else, wondered the same thing. Being informative was good, but she was getting a little carried away in her desire to educate. Laoshi had to laugh at that.
Yes, that's a valid question. I do apologize. Cyber zombification will be the least of your worries, I imagine. There are more processes, not all as gruesome. For example, mages extremely absorbed in their work might find their soul slowly drifting away, and might one day see it completely detached to wander the astral plane alone, leaving their bodies asleep forever. And in your cases, well, you lose essence because the virus consumes it. Or better, because it creates tears through which it slowly but surely leaks out.
Bowtie chimed in.
Tears? That makes sense. Why do you say that?
Laoshi asked, intrigued.
Well,
he explained,
I knew something was wrong with me from the start. I'm a medical professional after all, but I didn't know what. So I did a decidedly unscientific thing, and went to a friend to get my aura read. He said it was, well, I don't remember the words he used, but frayed and blackened?
Kate interrupted him. She remembered Ning's reading all too well. His eyes lit up.
Yes, those weren't the exact words, but something along those lines. So what he saw were probably those tears.
Laoshi nodded.
That's the scientifically accepted theory, yes. You need to take other, uninfected people's essence to sustain yourselves. It's no different than an uninfected person eating the meat of a cow, but many will call it monstrous and call you abominations to be destroyed. Typical humans,
Blogger remarked.
Just fine with murdering innocent animals, but when they're the prey, suddenly it's unnatural and abominable. Well,
Kate said cautiously,
you can't blame them for not being a big fan.
The blue-haired girl just rolled her eyes as if Kate had said the stupidest thing in the world.
It's natural for meta-humanity to fear the infected.
Though, she said gently.
But they should realize you are victims of a virus, not monsters preying on them for pleasure or enjoyment.
Teenage raised her hand again.
So what about infection? Ah, yes. The other unfortunate consequence of feeding.
She took a moment to think and sighed.
The truth is, it's a bit of a lottery. Infectivity is significant but nowhere near guaranteed. We don't know exactly what aids or hampers transmission of the virus, but weakened, injured, or already ill victims are definitely more likely to suffer infection. What we do know is that the virus is dependent on host cells to survive, and that it is able to pass through mucous membranes.
Bowtie let out a grunt.
So that means it replicates in host lymphocytes. And if it can pass through mucous membranes, it can transfer via hematophagia.
With a mischievous grin, Teenage said,
Can I be a horrible cliché and say, in English, Doc?
Bowtie had to chuckle at that.
Right, of course. Basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laoshi, but it means that the virus multiplies in the blood. Since it is capable of passing through mucous membranes, it's also contained in the saliva.
The conclusion didn't need to be said, but he did it anyway.
Meaning bites, to drink blood or eat flesh, are a wonderful means of transmission.
Laoshi agreed.
The best? And I assume there's no cure?
Bowtie asked, even though they all knew that if there was, it would have been administered or at least mentioned by now. He only got a headshake in response. Teenage grinned.
Maybe someone's popping all the blue research bubbles.
That got a chuckle out of Kate, but judging from the blank stares of everyone else, she was the only one who got it. So that means, Impatient Beard Man asked,
that we can't survive without infecting others? That's exactly what it means. Well,
he scoffed.
Then the best thing for all of us to do is kill ourselves right here. I doubt you'll find everyone here willing to do that.
She said with a patient smile.
Not should you, or I, or any of us, try to convince them.
She spread her hands.
I wish there was some way to give you good news, but this is the truth, people. None of us can force you to manage your symptoms ethically, but at least now you know exactly what the hows and whys of it are.
She corrected herself.
Well, sadly not the whys. We'll never know those.
Impatient Beard Man didn't give up.
So what? We should kill our victims after feeding to make sure they don't get infected. Spare them the so-called fate worse than death. I don't know, man.
One of the vampires who had thus far been silent, a young guy who slouched in his chair, wearing a brown leather jacket, finally spoke.
I'm thinking this whole woe is me shit is pretty drama-horish. I mean, sure, we've got some kind of crazy disease, and we gotta feed, and our skin's got UV protection factor -1,000. But apart from that, we can still live pretty much normally, right? Fate worse than death, P.
Kate was inclined to agree. The feeding and infecting had serious moral implications, but apart from that, she felt pretty good. Chronically cold, sure, and her heart didn't beat as confidently as she'd like it to, but those were small things in the end. If she had to make the choice between letting someone live as an infected or killing them outright, there was really no good reason to choose the latter. Teenage also shared the sentiment.
He's right. I mean, this isn't that bad. Sucks that I won't get to go to the beaches of the Dominican for my 20th birthday. But I mean, we've still got a lot to live for, right?
Blogger abruptly veered up.
Speak for yourselves, you strainest assholes,
she shouted.
It's easy for you, hard scream bounds, to sit there and claim there isn't a problem.
The others, including Laoshi, let her rage for a moment. She clearly needed to let it out.
Meanwhile, you're sitting there with your smooth skins and your little pointy fangs and your vamp normative bullshit, while we have to live like this. You can't imagine what this is like, so, check your vamp privilege.
Lab Tech backed her up.
You all got a lot of fucking nerve sitting there and saying it's not all that bad. Whoa,
Teenage said quietly.
We're just trying to stay positive here. Yeah, well,
Blogger spat.
First show some empathy for the less privileged. Then you can worry about being positive.
Teenage's understanding seemed at an end, her adorable, cheerful face hardening.
I'll worry about whatever the fuck I like, whenever the fuck I like, thanks.
Blogger's eyes flashed.
Did you just tell him police me? Easy.
Laoshi diffused the situation.
This is hard for all of you. Yeah, well.
Leather Jacket Rebel said slowly, getting up from his chair.
I'm not gonna sit and listen to the rest of this professional victim bullshit. I'm gonna spend my last money on a bike and make the best of it. You know, play with the hand I'm dealt instead of complaining to the dealer. Thanks for all the info, Laoshi, or whatever your real name is.
He clicked his tongue and gave her 2 gun fingers.
You're a peach, I mean it. Thanks.
With that, he slung his jacket over his shoulder and walked out Shane. Laoshi let him go and put her hand on Blogger's shoulder.
Hey, I know it's not easy for you guys, but you have to understand that asking them to feel miserable in your place is unfair. I know how hard it is, and I'm sure they don't underestimate it either, but blaming others won't solve anything.
The blue-haired girl sat with her arms crossed and her head lowered.
It's just so goddamn unfair. I don't deserve this. No,
Kate said carefully.
You don't. And each and every one of us would want nothing more than to undo what happened to you. But, honey, it's not our fault. I know.
She sniffed.
I just needed to rage. It seems like nobody cares about us.
Bowtie pitched in too.
I think that right now, we're all too busy caring about ourselves and trying to make sense of all this to be capable of caring about others.
Teenage only gave a snort and an eye roll.
She is right, though.
Laoshi pointed out.
If in a bit overly buzzworded fashion in that your group has been somewhat lacking in showing understanding for the others. That's not a reproach. I know it's a lot to take in for you guys too, but I think the Krieger people can use a bit more support and solidarity. Yeah.
Kate had to admit.
You've got a point. I can't speak for the others, but I really feel deeply sorry for what happened to you. I mean it. And I fully acknowledge that we're the lucky ones here. I'm sorry for not being more considerate.
Blogger wiped her tears away, and even though she kept looking at the ground, she said quietly.
That's all I needed to hear, thanks.
Laoshi looked at her watch.
It'll be dawn in 2 hours. We'll continue the support group part for as long as people can before they need to go to their sleeping place. As you doubtless already know, all sufferers of the human meta-human vampiric virus are extremely allergic to sunlight, which manifests in severe skin pains, cutaneous cellular degeneration, and photophobia.
She gave a brief cough.
As in skin pains and burns, and your eyes won't be able to tolerate sunlight.
Teenage had her sense of humor back.
Thanks, that's better.
Impatient beard man asked.
I assume none of that tread stuff is actually true? No. None of that other pop culture stuff either. Garlic? Worthless. A cross. Tell them to shove it up the orifice of their choice. A stake. Only if it catches you in the heart, because, well, it's a pointed stake. Through the heart. Running water? These people bathe regularly. Huh. In Polish vampire myths.
Kate felt like sharing.
You can frighten a vampire by stabbing at its shadow.
Laoshi chuckled.
Hadn't heard that one before. That's actually a pretty good one. But no. And you can enter houses without being invited. One thing though, you might notice some painful allergies to 1 or 2 materials. It's often wood, but it can be other things. Nobody knows what causes it, or how the material is determined, but it can be very painful or frightening.
She sighed.
Does everyone have a place to sleep?
Most mumbled a tentatively affirmative response. Kate just kept quiet. She'd find a spot.
If not, you can stay here. It's not luxury, but it's safe. We'll be carrying on the support conversations for a while, as long as everyone can.
It was no coincidence that most of the Hards Greenbaumers rose, and the Kriegers remained. They doubtless needed the group's support. Kate felt sorry for them.
Well,
Teenage said, putting on her trendy latex jacket.
The self-help stuff's not really my thing, but thanks for this session. It was very enlightening. Same.
Impatient beard man agreed. Bowtie stood up and gave a short bow.
Thank you, Laoshi. You've answered a lot of questions.
Laoshi nodded.
You're always welcome here if you need more information or when times are tough. Thanks a lot.
Kate echoed the others.
We'll try the best we can to, 'cause as little harm as possible. I'm sure you will, but one more thing, if I may.
Kate had a suspicion what she was going to ask.
We would like to see your eyes before you leave. The sunglasses are so impersonal. Whatever you're hiding, it can't be something we'll judge you for.
She figured the woman with the fringe had earned that much, and indeed, it's not like she'd be cast out or branded a monster because of a red eye.
Yeah, all right. Just don't say it's a sign of a horrible variant of the virus. I won't,
Laoshi said with a smile. Kate took off her sunglasses, and thankfully the reaction she got was not one of mortified surprise or wailing panic, but of curiosity. Laoshi and the others seemed genuinely intrigued. Even Blogger had temporarily forgotten her misery.
That's strange. Did you have it before the infection? Nope. Woke up with it after the accident.
Bowtie looked at her face from several angles before concluding.
It doesn't look like it's caused by the accident or any kind of physical trauma. Orbital hematoma doesn't look like that, and even then I would expect periorbital hematoma, panda eyes. But this, very weird. I've seen it before.
Laoshi ruminated quietly.
Or heard of it.
Her eyes were narrow. She was clearly thinking hard.
I remember. I think. Kodak, I can't be sure, and I don't want to give you false hope, but I know of some people who might help you find who infected you. It's a long shot, but it's certainly possible. Really? Alright, where do I go? The place you need to go is called Hoi. It's a boat village not far from here, it's where.
She interrupted herself.
Never mind. There's a group of people there who recently told me about someone who might have someone. I don't know where they live, but I know someone who knows.
This was good news. It gave her something to go on. The whole business with Sang wasn't solved and might never be, but this too was the question she wanted answered. Not because it mattered in a practical sense, it didn't, but because, much like an adopted child searching for its birth mother, she wanted to know. To see the person who'd done it, ask the questions she wanted to ask, and put it behind her.
You don't seem like a pushover to me,
the woman said.
And I'm sending you to good people. One of them also has the human meta-human vampiric virus. Actually, Krieger strain. Anyway, like I said, they're good people, but they're also careful, with reason. I certainly don't want to cause trouble for anyone. Good, because if you do, well, say that they're hardened fighters would be an understatement.
She gave a polite smile.
Before I tell you, do you promise me you won't abuse this information?
Kate shrugged. What would she even abuse it for anyway?
Sure, yeah. I just want to ask them a few questions.
Laoshi took her by the shoulder and led her away from the others.
Go to Hoi, to the docks. There will be a ship moored there. No longer seaworthy, but it's being used as a living space by the people who can help you. Go unarmed. Trust me, it'll make things easier.
That wasn't very promising.
You're sure these people won't just blow my brains out? Because the way you're saying it. No. Like I said, they're good people. Can be a bit scary at times, some in particular, but they'll help you as long as you're friendly and respectful. And don't worry, the group's leader and second have their hearts in the right place. The others too, mostly, but they're less obvious about it.
She chuckled.
Okay, so what's the boat called?
She looked around furtively, then said,
It's not a boat, it's a ship. The bolt hole. Again, make sure you're unarmed when you approach it. Cool. I really appreciate this. Really. Just make sure it doesn't blow up in my face, or I'll find you.
With a grin, she added,
Do not take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks and all that. I don't.
Kate said with a chuckle.
And I'll be good. Take care. I have to.
She motioned towards the remaining group members, all of them ghouls.
Oh, sure. Hope they feel better. They will. Bye, Kotek. See ya.
End of chapter.